If you love high-stakes family drama, secrets, and a battle for justice, stay with me. What I discovered in my own home would shock anyone, and it almost destroyed me. Read closely, because this story will make you question how well you really know the people closest to you. I always thought I knew my family, that I could trust them. But I was wrong, terribly, dangerously wrong. It started with a strange feeling, a prickling in my gut that something in my house wasn't right. My home had always been my sanctuary, but lately it felt like a stage, and I was only an unsuspecting audience. I faked a trip to visit my sister, though I never left. From across the street, I watched my house, trying to see what they were hiding. I was 64, small and unassuming, a mother who had raised a son and welcomed a daughter-in-law with love. But even my vigilance could hardly prepare me for what I found. Then something extraordinary happened. An elderly neighbor, someone I had barely spoken to, tapped my shoulder while I was peering through the hedge. Wet until midnight. He whispered, "You'll see everything." Midnight came, and with it, the truth. My breath caught in my chest. In the shed behind the house, I found documents, notes, plans, every detail of a conspiracy that chilled me to the bone. They weren't just stealing from me. They were systematically dismantling my life. I took photos of every page. My hands shook so much that some shots were blurred, but I captured the evidence. Notes detailing sedatives, signatures to be forged, and a nursing home prepped to hold me. I had imagined the worst in my life, but nothing had prepared me for this. Moses, my old friend, had been waiting in the alley. When I showed him the photos, his face turned white. "A criminal scheme," he whispered. "They want to destroy you." I didn't need to hear more to know he was right. That night, I called Ellen, my trusted lawyer. I recounted everything: the documents, the sedative, the false powers of attorney, the illegal business running in my house. Her silence stretched long, heavy with contained fury. Then, finally, she spoke. "Elellanena, this is beyond fraud. This is conspiracy, kidnapping and planning, and document falsification. But with evidence like this, we can stop them." We made a plan, precise and calculated. First, I would stay safe. Second, Ellen would prepare legal documents to protect my estate. Third, we would file a complaint immediately. And fourth, we would set a trap. I didn't fully understand the trap then, but I trusted Ellen. "They think you know nothing," she said. "Use that." The next day, Moses drove me to Ellen's office. A notary, Henry, joined us, calm, serious, professional. Over 3 hours I signed document after document. Powers of attorney revoking any authority my son, Robert, might claim. A declaration of mental competency. A new will excluding Robert entirely. A preventative protection order. Each signature felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. The trap required subtlety. I would return to my house as if nothing had happened, tired, trusting, the naive mother-in-law they thought I was. Meanwhile, Ellen and Henry would coordinate authorities, inspectors, and legal steps behind the scenes. Lissandro, the doctor mentioned in their notes, would be investigated. They would think they were still in control. Returning home was surreal. Robert and Audrey, my daughter-in-law, were perfectly cordial, acting as if I had been away visiting my sister for days. I played the part. We drank tea. I told fabricated stories, and all the while, my heart pounded as I remembered the notes I had photographed: sedatives, fraudulent signatures, the nursing home ready for me. That night, I overheard them planning. My heart sank, but my resolve hardened. They spoke casually about drugging me during a routine checkup, finalizing a fraudulent power of attorney, and committing me to a facility where I could only be visited monthly. They didn't know I was listening. I called Ellen and relayed everything. The plan was in motion, but my trap was bigger. Inspector visits, police on standby, documentation of illegal activities. They had no idea how trapped they already were. For 2 days, I played the role of the unsuspecting mother. I acted cheerful, helpful, completely innocent. I offered help to Audrey, baked cookies for Robert, chatted about trivial things. They relaxed, unaware of how closely their plans were being monitored. Then came Thursday, the night the municipal inspector would arrive. Guests started showing up. People Robert and Audrey were renting rooms to illegally, using my house as a secret lodging business. 7 guests in total. Audrey played the hostess, Robert the cheerful guide. I retreated to my room, pretending to read, waiting for the chaos that would come. At exactly 900, the doorbell rang. Authority, not hospitality. The municipal inspector had arrived, backed by the law, ready to expose their illegal operations. I peeked out my door, my heart raced. The inspector entered, questioned Robert, and began documenting everything. Guests who were supposed to be friends revealed themselves as paying lodgers. Bedrooms, bathrooms, towels, kitchen items, every piece of evidence stacked against them. Robert tried to defend himself. "It's not a business," he said, voice trembling. The inspector interrupted, exposing every violation: no permits, taxes unpaid, cash from illegal rentals, false claims. Audrey and Robert could do nothing. Their empire built on deception collapsed before my eyes. I stepped into the living room, finally, calm, controlled. "I am Elellanena Vega," I said, "the owner of this property. I did not authorize any of this." Their faces turned from smug to petrified. Audrey tried to speak, but no words could undo what had been exposed. Robert, my own son, collapsed into a chair, sobbing, realizing the depth of his betrayal and the inevitability of his consequences. We weren't done yet. Dr. Lissandro's involvement would be reported. Legal protections for me were in place. The powers of attorney he and Audrey had schemed to use against me were revoked. My estate, my mind, my freedom, all mine again. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my living room, watching the chaos and quiet, feeling the full weight of betrayal and triumph. I was a mother betrayed, a woman wronged, but also a survivor ready to reclaim her life. The next morning felt surreal. My house was quiet, the tension of the previous night still thick in the air. Robert and Audrey were moving silently, the weight of their failure pressing on them like a physical force. I watched from the kitchen window as Robert drove away to run errands, still pale and shaky. Audrey lingered, pretending to tidy up, but every movement was stiff, forced. I sipped my coffee slowly, savoring the sense of regained control while masking every ounce of satisfaction. I knew this was only the beginning. My lawyer Ellen had warned me that even with the inspector's report, the fine, and legal protections, Robert and Audrey would try something else. They had nothing left to lose, yet I had everything to protect. That meant vigilance, strategy, and a heart of steel. For the next 2 days, I continued the act I had perfected. Sweet smiles, helpful gestures, the innocent mother who knew nothing. I asked Audrey how the housework was going, offered to fold laundry, baked Robert's favorite cookies. Small, deliberate moves to convince them their secrets were still safe. Every lie I told them had the weight of truth behind it. I knew their plan, their timeline, and the trap was set, slowly closing around them. Wednesday night, Audrey came into the kitchen, holding a brochure for a preventive health checkup. "Mom, how about we go Friday morning?" "It's free for seniors," she suggested. I smiled pleasantly, replying casually, "That sounds wonderful. I haven't been to a doctor in a while." My smile hid the fury boiling inside me. I knew exactly what this checkup really was: the moment they planned to sedate me and make me sign a fraudulent power of attorney. I called Ellen immediately, recounting the brochure and my suspicions. "Perfect," she said, calm and calculated. "We'll coordinate the municipal inspector to arrive Thursday night, when the house is full of living evidence. Police will be on standby. You stay in your room and do exactly what you're doing. We'll handle the rest." Thursday arrived. I continued my act flawlessly. Breakfast, casual conversation, helping Audrey with small chores, all part of the performance. By the afternoon, guests began arriving just as we anticipated. Young couples, groups of friends, even lone travelers, 7 people in total, all paying, all unknowingly part of the evidence that would ruin Robert and Audrey. I retreated to my bedroom, pretending to read. Every sound outside, the laughter, the rustling of suitcases, the clinking of dishes, was music to my ears. I knew that each guest was one more piece of the puzzle, one more confirmation of their illegal operation. At 900, the doorbell rang, authority firm and uncompromising. Municipal inspector. My heart raced, but my face remained calm. I peeked from the bedroom. Robert answered, his voice attempting calm authority. The inspector's presence immediately changed the atmosphere. The tension in the room thickened, suffocating, almost tangible. The inspection began. The inspector asked Robert routine questions, and I watched as he stumbled over each one. The guests, previously a backdrop for deception, became witnesses, confirming the operation with every confused answer. Bedrooms, bathrooms, kitchen items, everything that had been used for profit, without my consent, was meticulously documented. Audrey attempted improvisation, insisting the guests were friends, but the inspector ignored her protests. "We have an inspection order signed by a judge," he said. "If you do not cooperate, we will return with police and a search warrant." Robert's face fell. He had no papers, no permits, no defense. The cash hidden in the shed, the informal charges for lodging, all of it exposed. For the first time, I saw true fear in his eyes, not the staged politeness he used so effectively before. And then, it was time. I opened my bedroom door, walked out with deliberate calm. "Good evening," I said loud enough for everyone to hear. "I am Elellanena Vega, the owner of this property. I did not authorize any of this." Audrey froze, her perfect composure shattered. Robert's jaw went slack, disbelief etching lines into his face. I walked slowly toward them, every step measured, controlled. "I know everything," I said. "The illegal lodging, the cash hidden in the shed, the plan to drug me, the fraudulent documents, the nursing home prepared to lock me away." Audrey tried to speak, but no words could undo the damage. Robert raised his head, eyes brimming with tears, realizing that their carefully orchestrated plan had crumbled in one night. The inspector and his assistant continued their work, documenting every infraction. I stood in the center of the living room, calm, authoritative, finally in complete control of the house that had been stolen from me in spirit if not in reality. My home, my rules, my life, reclaimed. Robert tried to defend himself. "Mom, we were desperate. We needed money." I interrupted, voice sharp, cutting. "Desperate. So you decided to betray me, to steal my home, my freedom, my dignity." Audrey gasped. "It wasn't stealing. It was just to cover expenses." I shook my head slowly, fury contained. "It was theft, deception, and conspiracy. You planned to drug me, to manipulate me, to take my life under the guise of care, and you thought I wouldn't notice." Robert collapsed back onto the sofa, sobbing, and Audrey was frozen, a cornered animal trapped by the law and my resolve. My chest was tight with a mix of anger, betrayal, and relief. I had anticipated every move, every lie, every justification, and now all of it lay exposed. I didn't speak for a long moment, letting the reality of their defeat sink in. Then I calmly continued. "You will pack your things and leave my house. By tomorrow noon, there will be no discussion, no negotiation. This home is mine and my life is mine." Audrey's voice rose in desperation. "Evict us. Where are we going to go? We have nothing." I pointed calmly to the shed, the cash, the evidence of their illegal operation. "Use what you earned illegally to resolve your immediate needs, and then face the consequences of your actions," Robert pleaded, voice breaking. "Mom, please, we can fix this." "We'll leave the house, but don't report us." I looked at him steadily, the weight of betrayal and years of love and disappointment pressing down. "Robert, the law will determine what happens next. You will live with the consequences of your choices as you should. My forgiveness is not yours to claim." That night, I stayed in my living room, listening to the suitcases being dragged across floors, the last whispers of a life they had planned to steal. Alone, I finally allowed myself to breathe, to release the tight coil of fear and anger that had bound me for weeks. By Friday morning, Robert and Audrey had left. I sat by the window, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise over a house finally my own. I walked through every room slowly, reclaiming every inch, erasing traces of strangers and betrayal. My home was mine again. Moses arrived with a hot meal. We ate in silence, then I recounted every detail. He nodded, his hand on mine. "You did the right thing, Elellanena." Painful but right. It hurt precisely because they were family, because I had loved. But surviving, reclaiming my autonomy, was victory enough. I was free, vigilant, and stronger than ever. And I knew that the next steps, the medical investigation, the civil and criminal follow-ups, would ensure that no one ever tried to destroy me again. The battle isn't over yet. In Part 3, I'll reveal how the corrupt doctor is exposed, my legal power over my property is secured, and the emotional confrontation with my son reaches an even higher intensity. Don't miss it. This is where the real reckoning begins. The morning after Robert and Audrey left, the house felt like a sanctuary again. The air was lighter, the sunlight spilling across the floors like permission to breathe freely. I walked slowly through each room, taking inventory of what had been used, touched, invaded, and reclaiming it with a quiet, deliberate ceremony. Every piece of furniture, every surface, every corner was mine again. And yet, the battle wasn't over. My victory in the house was only the beginning. By mid-morning, my phone rang. It was Ellen. Her voice was calm but tinged with satisfaction. "The complaint against Dr. Lissandro has been formally accepted. The medical board will investigate his conduct. With your documentation, photographic evidence, and the notes we recovered, it's very likely they will revoke his license. He won't be able to practice again." I felt a wave of relief mixed with righteous anger. That man had been willing to participate in a scheme to drug me, to take control of my life, and he would pay for it. Good. He deserves every consequence, I said. Now, about the civil and criminal proceedings against Robert and Audrey. Ellen continued. You've made your decision about criminal charges. I hesitated. Part of me wanted justice in the harshest form, a reckoning that would make them feel the weight of their betrayal. But another part, the part that had once loved my son, could not bear to send him to jail. I spoke cautiously. I will not proceed with criminal charges against them. I want them to live with the consequences of their actions civilly. Let the fines, the legal restrictions, and the public record be enough. Ellen's voice softened. I understand. That is a very measured decision, Elellanena. You are protecting yourself while leaving room for redemption if that is possible. But rest assured, civilly, they will not touch your property, and they will face severe repercussions financially. I hung up, and for the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to sit down, truly sit down, without thinking about spies, secret plans, or hidden cameras. My house was safe. My mind was sharp. And yet a thread of anxiety lingered. What if Robert, what if Audrey, tried some final move out of desperation? I spent the next few days restoring the house further. New curtains, rearranging furniture, clearing out the last signs of strangers. My husband and I had built this home together, and it deserved to be a reflection of my reclaimed life. The garden flourished under my care, flowers blooming in colors I had never chosen before, a riot of life and freedom. Late on Thursday evening, I received a text from Ellen. Inspector confirmed for 900 tonight. Police will be on standby nearby. Stay in your room. We'll handle everything. I glanced at the clock. Guests had been coming over in the past 2 weeks, checking in under Robert and Audrey's secret arrangements. Tonight would be the final demonstration of their exposed operations. At 900, as expected, a firm knock sounded at the door. The municipal inspector's presence was immediate, undeniable authority filling the air. Robert and Audrey froze. I watched them from the safety of my room, pretending to read while every nerve in my body thrummed with anticipation. The inspection was meticulous. Bedrooms, bathrooms, kitchen, all documented with photographs and notes. Guests, previously pawns in their scheme, confirmed with confused honesty that they were paying occupants, not family members. Audrey tried to intervene, but the inspector was methodical, unwavering, legal authority incarnate. When the inspector looked at me, I opened the door and announced with calm and control I had not felt in weeks. I am Elellanena Vega, the owner of this property. I did not authorize any of this. Robert's face drained of color. Audrey's mouth opened, closed, words failing her. I walked toward them deliberately. I know everything. The illegal lodging, the cash hidden in the shed, the plan to drug me, the fraudulent power of attorney, the nursing home prepared to lock me away. They were paralyzed. Every threat, every scheme, every desperate calculation had been rendered useless. I felt no pleasure, only the calm satisfaction of justice unfolding naturally. The inspector confirmed everything: violations, undeclared income, fines, the requirement for immediate vacating of the property by non-residents. Robert tried to defend himself, stammering excuses, but each one fell flat under the weight of evidence and law. Audrey, once the master manipulator, was silent, trapped, exposed. I took one last step forward and stated the rules clearly. They had until noon Friday to pack and leave, and every illegal gain they had made from my property would go toward fines and restitution. There would be no negotiation, no excuses, no manipulation. My words, measured and firm, were enough. That night the house emptied of guests. The chaos of suitcases, hurried packing, whispered apologies filled the air. Robert left one last note on the table and walked away, leaving the keys behind. Audrey was silent, defeated, a shadow of her former confident self. I stayed awake that night, listening to the quiet, finally allowing myself to feel the enormity of what had happened. Betrayal had turned to revelation, fear had turned to control, and my home, my life, and my freedom had been reclaimed. The next morning, I walked through the house again, slowly, deliberately. Every room I passed felt like mine, truly mine, for the first time in months. Every surface, every object, every light switch. Ownership, control, autonomy, restored. Moses came by with a simple meal, his presence a balm for the weeks of tension. We ate quietly, then he placed his hand on mine. You did the right thing, Elellanena. Painful, but right. He said. I nodded, knowing the truth of it. Pain was inevitable. Betrayal was unforgettable. But survival, freedom, and reclaiming one's life, those were victories beyond measure. Later, as I prepared for sleep in my quiet house, I reflected on everything. The fake trips, the night of spying, the shed with its hidden truths, the confrontation, the legal battle. It had all brought me to this point. Alone, yes, hurt certainly, but free. Owner of my life, my mind, my home. And for the first time in a long time, I slept knowing I was safe, respected, and unbroken. Reveals how Ellen finalizes my legal protections, the corrupt doctor faces full consequences, and the civil and emotional aftermath with Robert and Audrey unfolds. The drama intensifies. Stay tuned to witness the full reckoning. The days after Robert and Audrey's eviction were both peaceful and strange. My house, once a place of anxiety and tension, felt like a sanctuary, yet each room still carried echoes of betrayal. I spent hours walking through it, examining corners, opening drawers, closets, cupboards, and even the shed one last time. Everything that had been theirs, every trace of manipulation and deceit, had been removed. I considered burning the sheets the guests had used, but I decided against it. Memories, even painful ones, can serve as reminders of survival. Ellen called early the next morning. "Elellanena, we need to finalize your legal protections. Any attempt by Robert or Audrey to contest their fines or the revocation of power over your property will be dismissed if we have all documentation in order. I've prepared everything." I nodded, my voice steady. "Let's finish it." By late morning, Moses drove me to Ellen's office again. Henry, the notary, was there as always, professional and patient. Ellen laid out the final stack of documents, new powers of attorney that excluded Robert entirely, reinforced declarations of my mental competence, and new contracts ensuring no fraudulent claims could be made against my property in the future. Every page I signed felt like a brick in the foundation of my restored life. "Everything is airtight now," Ellen said, satisfaction in her tone. "No one can manipulate you again. Your estate, your finances, your life decisions are completely yours." I allowed myself a small smile, a rare moment of relief. "Thank you, Ellen, for everything." While the legal matters were secure, the emotional landscape was more complicated. I thought about Robert often, the boy he had been, the man he had become, and the son I had loved unconditionally. I couldn't ignore that part of me still mourned the betrayal. Forgiveness seemed impossible, yet holding on to hatred felt equally heavy. Moses reminded me that time and perspective would shape what came next. As the week progressed, Ellen kept me informed about Dr. Lissandro. The investigation had started, fueled by my evidence and testimony. The board would conduct interviews, review the notes and documents, and make a determination on his medical license. It was reassuring to know that someone who would consider harming a patient for financial gain would be held accountable. Justice, in a tangible way, was beginning to take shape. Meanwhile, I focused on myself. I converted my old master bedroom into a painting studio. The colors I chose were warm and vibrant. Reds, yellows, oranges, symbolic of energy, life, and courage. Each stroke of the brush was a reclaiming of time, creativity, and joy. Moses came twice a week for dinner, and sometimes we sat in the garden late into the evening, talking about ordinary life, which suddenly felt like a luxury. Even in my daily routine, traces of fear lingered. Small noises startled me. Shadows in the hallway felt like eyes watching. But each day, the confidence in my legal and personal safety grew. I realized that empowerment came not just from law and evidence, but from reclaiming control over my own mind and environment. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived. I recognized the handwriting immediately, Robert's. My hands trembled as I opened it, a familiar mixture of dread and curiosity rising inside me. The letter was an apology unlike anything I had expected. "Mom, I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know what I did was unforgivable. Greed blinded me, and I allowed it to corrupt my judgment. Audrey pushed me toward a path I should have resisted, and I failed. I betrayed you, the person who loved me most. I cannot erase my actions, and I don't want to make excuses. I only want you to know that I am sorry, that the weight of my betrayal haunts me every day. Audrey and I have separated. I live alone now, in a small apartment, working construction to pay off the debts we incurred. Life is nothing like before. I'm learning every day what it means to face consequences honestly. I don't ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just want you to know that I am truly remorseful. Your son, Robert." I folded the letter carefully, tears streaming down my cheeks. Part of me wanted to crush it, discard it, erase the memory of him completely. Yet another part, the maternal part that Moses had referenced, felt the weight of his pain. It was real. It wasn't justification, but it was acknowledgement. I didn't respond immediately. Days passed. I considered calling, visiting, trying to offer some measure of reconciliation. But every time I reached for the phone, the image of the shed, the documents, and the conversations about Golden Hope residents reminded me why caution was necessary. Forgiveness, I realized, could not be rushed. It had to be earned, understood, and internalized, not forced. Ellen checked in regularly. "How are you holding up with Robert's letter?" she asked during one consultation. "I'm conflicted," I admitted. "I want to forgive, but I can't forget. Part of me wants him to understand the weight of his actions fully." "That is very wise," she said. "Forgiveness is for your peace, not necessarily for his. You survived a betrayal most people couldn't even imagine. That strength is yours, and it doesn't disappear because someone apologizes." I nodded, taking in her words. Each day I felt a small lightness in my chest, a gradual relief from the constant vigilance and fear. My house, once a stage for manipulation and schemes, had become my sanctuary again. I painted, I gardened, I cooked for myself and Moses. I allowed laughter to return, small at first, then genuine. The inspector's visit had not been the final step, it was a turning point. Public authorities had validated my ownership, confirmed the illegality of the actions against me, and ensured Robert and Audrey's operations were halted. Civilly, I was protected. Emotionally, I had begun to reclaim control. The house, the documents, the fines, the legal protections, they were all symbols of boundaries firmly restored. One afternoon, while painting a large canvas in the studio, I reflected on the entire ordeal. The fake trips, the shed with its hidden truths, the confrontation, the final eviction, and the letters of apology. The intensity of fear and betrayal had forced me to act decisively, to reclaim my life in a way that required courage, patience, and meticulous planning. It was exhausting, painful, and yet transformative. Moses came in silently, observing the nearly finished painting, a vibrant explosion of life and freedom. "It's beautiful," he said softly. "You've transformed your pain into something extraordinary." I smiled faintly. "It's more than just paint, it's a record of what I survived. Every stroke reminds me that I am still here, that I am whole." That night, as I lay in bed, I realized that the past weeks had taught me invaluable lessons. Trust, while precious, had to be tempered with wisdom. Love, while deep, could not blind one to manipulation. And self-respect, courage, and vigilance were the shields that ensured survival. I fell asleep with a rare sense of peace, knowing that while Robert and Audrey had attempted to destroy me, I had reclaimed not just my house, but my dignity, autonomy, and inner strength. The following weeks felt surreal. My home, once a stage for deceit and danger, had settled into a calm, almost sacred rhythm. The cleaning company had replaced every trace of past intrusion. The bedsheets, the curtains, even the furniture used by the guests. I painted, I gardened, and I allowed myself to breathe again, but the legal battles were far from over. Ellen called one morning with news about Dr. Lissandro. "Elellanena, the medical board is proceeding aggressively. They've suspended his license temporarily while the investigation is ongoing. The documents and photographic evidence you provided were decisive. If they confirm that he intended to drug you for fraudulent signatures, he will lose his license permanently. Criminal charges may follow." I felt a mixture of relief and lingering anger. It was justice for what he intended, but also a grim reminder of how close I had come to being harmed. The more I thought about it, the more I understood how meticulous and predatory some people could be, and yet in a way surviving this ordeal gave me a sense of clarity. I realized that vigilance, preparation, and courage weren't just traits, they were shields against life's worst betrayals. As for Robert and Audrey, Ellen advised patience. The civil fines for the illegal lodging business and the misuse of my property had been filed, and they could not contest the documentation I had already signed, but their anger was palpable and unresolved. I had received small notes, hints that Robert had tried to contact mutual acquaintances, likely seeking some leverage or reconciliation. Audrey, I was told, had been pursuing legal advice, likely attempting to contest the municipal fines. Yet the layers of protection Ellen had put in place rendered such efforts useless. One afternoon, I sat in my newly painted studio, staring at a nearly finished canvas. Each brushstroke seemed to carry the residue of fear, betrayal, and now empowerment. Moses came by as usual, bringing lunch and warmth in the quiet silence of my home. "I can see it in your work," he said softly, eyes scanning the vibrant colors. "This isn't just art. It's a reclamation." "Yes," I said, pausing for a moment. "Every stroke reminds me that I survived, that I'm still in control." Moses smiled, but there was concern in his gaze. Are you sure you're ready for the next steps? Civilly, Robert and Audrey are bound, but emotionally, you're still carrying the weight of their betrayal. I am, I said, though I knew it was partially true. My anger had become a precise, controlled force, channeled into protecting myself and reclaiming what was mine. Forgiveness would take time, perhaps longer than I imagined, but I was no longer consumed by rage. It had transformed into resolve. Ellen called later that week to confirm the next steps. Elellanena, the municipal authorities have finalized the fines. Robert and Audrey are responsible for all costs, including taxes and penalties. You are completely protected. I recommend sending a formal letter outlining their obligations and warning them against any further contact. I nodded, silently grateful. The weight of fear, of feeling unsafe in my own home, had finally lifted. Yet part of me remained curious about their reactions, about whether the reality of what they had attempted to do, and the consequences, was fully sinking in. That Friday I received a package. It was from a courier, no return address. Inside, neatly folded, were a few personal items from Robert and Audrey, clothes, a small collection of keepsakes. Alongside it was a short note: Mom, we are gone. We understand the weight of our actions. We are paying our dues. Please do not contact us. Robert and Audrey. I held the note for a long time. My initial reaction was a flicker of satisfaction, but then I felt something heavier: finality. It wasn't just about revenge or justice anymore. It was about closure. The chapter was closing. I called Ellen. It's over, I said quietly. Not just over, she replied, her voice calm. You survived, you reclaimed your life, and legally, you're untouchable. That's a victory few people experience in their lifetime. But remember, the healing continues. Don't rush forgiveness or peace. Let it grow naturally. I hung up and returned to my studio. This time I painted differently. The colors were softer, gentler, blues, greens, and golds. They spoke of calm, renewal, and personal triumph. I began keeping a journal alongside my paintings, documenting every small victory, every moment of joy, every day that I woke up feeling safe and in control. Moses remained a constant presence. One evening, he brought over a small tray of desserts and tea. You're doing something extraordinary, he said, sitting beside me in the quiet living room. You've faced betrayal, danger, and manipulation, and yet you're still creating, still living. That's rare. I smiled, allowing a sense of pride to creep in. I never realized how much strength I had until I had no choice but to use it. And I never realized how much wisdom comes from surviving something like this. Fear sharpens, betrayal teaches, and courage defines you. As the days turned into weeks, I settled into a routine that was mine alone. Painting, reading, gardening, and enjoying quiet evenings became sacred rituals. The letters and updates from Ellen reminded me that the world outside was still moving. Dr. Lissandro's investigation was progressing, and Robert and Audrey were quietly dealing with the consequences of their choices. I didn't need to witness their punishment firsthand. The legal system and the tangible evidence ensured they could not escape accountability. I also began receiving calls and messages from people inspired by my story. Friends, neighbors, even strangers who had heard fragments. They expressed admiration for my courage, my foresight, and my ability to act decisively. At first, I hesitated to share details, but then I realized that my story could serve as a warning and a beacon for others who might find themselves in manipulative or dangerous situations. Sharing it didn't diminish my privacy. It transformed my experience into empowerment. One afternoon, as I painted a scene of sunlight flooding through my garden, Moses arrived with a simple observation. You've transformed, Elellanena. You're not just surviving anymore. You're living intentionally. That's something very few people ever achieve. I set down my brush, looking at him with gratitude. I learned the hard way, I said softly. Betrayal, danger, it was the worst, but it taught me more about myself than any peaceful time ever could. I know now that my life is mine, my decisions are mine, and my trust is precious. I will never take it lightly again. By this point, even the emotional weight of Robert's letter began to shift. It was still painful, but it no longer had the same sting. I understood that forgiveness, if it ever came, would be a personal choice, separate from justice or reconciliation. It wasn't about letting him off the hook. It was about freeing myself from the lingering chains of betrayal. Ellen checked in regularly, confirming procedural progress and ensuring no legal loopholes remained open. Each call reminded me that my life was secure, my assets protected, and my future intact. That sense of safety, legal, emotional, and physical, was invaluable. One evening, while sitting in the quiet living room, I realized something profound. I had emerged from a trap meant to destroy me, not just unscathed, but stronger, wiser, and more in control than ever. The betrayal had revealed the depth of my resilience, and the legal victories had reinforced my autonomy. I was no longer just surviving, I was reclaiming and redefining my life on my terms. Moses, standing quietly nearby, smiled knowingly. "You've not only survived, Elellanena, you've thrived. You've taken the worst circumstances imaginable and turned them into a life fully your own. That's extraordinary." I nodded, a calm sense of fulfillment settling in my chest. "It is extraordinary, and I've earned every piece of it." The days passed quietly, yet the tension of past weeks lingered like a faint shadow. Robert and Audrey were gone, their absence a silent testament to the consequences of their actions. Still, there were loose ends: Dr. Lissandro's investigation, the municipal follow-ups, and the slow, deliberate rebuilding of trust and peace in my home. Ellen called one morning, her voice calm but carrying a note of triumph. "Elellanena, the medical board has finalized its review. Dr. Lissandro is permanently stripped of his license. They found clear evidence of unethical intent, and your documentation was crucial. Additionally, the district attorney is pursuing criminal charges. While you are not the target, your testimony could be decisive if required." I felt a mixture of relief and quiet satisfaction. The man who had so nearly endangered my life would face permanent consequences. Justice, in its measured way, had arrived. I allowed myself a moment to breathe, to feel the weight of victory settle in my chest. Meanwhile, the municipal fines and civil repercussions for Robert and Audrey had become unavoidable realities. Ellen had filed the notices, and their repeated attempts to contest or delay the process had been futile. Each fine, each legal acknowledgement of their wrongdoing, was a reminder of the meticulous planning and swift action that had ensured they could not escape the consequences. Despite all this, the emotional side remained delicate. Robert's letter still lay in my drawer, a fragile reminder of a bond irreparably altered. I had not responded, and I was unsure if I ever would. Yet, the awareness of his remorse brought a complicated peace. It was not forgiveness, at least not fully, but a recognition of reality. He had changed, in some way, even if that change was only a shadow of regret. One morning, Moses came by with a small stack of mail. Among it was a formally printed notice from the municipal authorities confirming the closure of the illegal lodging investigation. Audrey and Robert had been held fully accountable, with fines calculated down to the last cent. I smiled faintly, not out of schadenfreude, but out of the sense that fairness had been restored. My home, my sanctuary, was legally and morally mine again. Ellen visited later that week. She and I sat in my sunlit studio, surrounded by the canvases that had become both therapy and testimony. "You've handled everything with remarkable composure," she said. "You faced a conspiracy, protected your assets, and reclaimed your home without resorting to aggression or impulsivity. That's rare." I nodded, feeling the weight of her praise but also the profound truth behind it. It wasn't easy. I cried, I was terrified, and I felt betrayed in a way I never thought possible. But at the same time, I discovered how much strength I actually had, and I realized that fear can be transformed into focus, betrayal into vigilance, and survival into empowerment. Ellen smiled, tapping a stack of legal documents. "There is one last formal step. You must update your will once more, reflecting all changes and ensuring complete clarity. This isn't just about you. It's about preventing any potential future exploitation. I can guide you through it today." Over the next few hours, I signed documents, notarized declarations, and finalized every legal safeguard. Each signature felt like a definitive claim over my life, my choices, and my autonomy. Robert and Audrey were permanently excluded as heirs. The power of attorney in anyone else's favor had been revoked. Protections against financial exploitation were airtight. I was free in the fullest sense of the word. That night, after Ellen left, I walked through my home alone. The air felt different. Lighter, cleaner, imbued with the peace that comes from reclaiming what is rightfully yours. I passed through each room, observing the changes I had made, the traces of strangers erased, the space returned to its intended purpose. The living room, now clear of clutter, seemed to breathe alongside me. The garden outside, with blooms of vibrant color, reflected my inner renewal. As I sat in the quiet, I realized the full impact of what had happened. I had been a target, nearly manipulated and controlled, yet I had emerged not just unscathed, but transformed. There was a profound clarity in understanding that my autonomy, my mind, and my home were not merely possessions. They were extensions of myself, and I had defended them fiercely. Moses called later that evening, as he often did, to check on me. I answered, and he listened patiently as I recounted the day's activities, the completion of the final legal steps, and the overwhelming sense of relief and closure. "You've done something extraordinary," he said quietly. "You've faced unimaginable deceit and danger, and yet you've created a life that is fully yours. Most people would have been crushed. You've thrived instead." I felt a small, warm smile cross my face. "I survived," I said softly. "And in surviving, I've reclaimed my life. I've learned that trust must be earned, that love must be accompanied by vigilance, and that forgiveness, when it comes, is a gift to yourself first." In the weeks that followed, I settled into a rhythm of intentional living. I painted, I gardened, I read, and I embraced moments of calm and joy. Moses remained a steadfast friend, often joining me for quiet meals or long conversations about life, resilience, and the human capacity for both good and evil. Ellen continued to check in periodically, ensuring that no legal loopholes remained open and that I remained fully protected. The letters and apologies from Robert had ceased. I had received no further contact from Audrey. The civil and legal measures were complete, the threats neutralized, and the sanctuary I had fought to preserve was intact. Yet even with all this, there was a profound lesson embedded in the experience. Vigilance, courage, and decisiveness are powerful tools, but so too are patience, clarity, and self-awareness. One afternoon, while painting in my studio, I reflected on everything that had occurred. The shed full of documents, the midnight spying, the confrontation with Robert and Audrey, the legal maneuvers, and the final reclamation of my home. Each memory carried a mixture of pain, anger, and ultimately empowerment. The ordeal had changed me irrevocably, but not for the worse. It had given me insight, strength, and the knowledge that I could navigate even the darkest and most calculated threats with strategy and resolve. I realized then that the true measure of my victory was not in fines collected, licenses revoked, or letters received. It was in the complete restoration of my autonomy. I was free in every meaningful sense, to live as I chose, to trust cautiously, to love wisely, and to reclaim the spaces that were mine. That evening, Moses stopped by with a small basket of fresh flowers. He stood in the doorway looking around at the home that now radiated peace. "It's beautiful," he said simply. "Not just the house, but you. You've survived, learned, and emerged stronger. That's remarkable." I nodded, feeling the truth of his words. "It is, and I'm finally allowing myself to enjoy it. To live without fear, without manipulation, without betrayal hanging over my head." That night, as I prepared for sleep, I reflected on the journey. The trap I had set, the confrontation, the legal and moral victories. They were all chapters in a story of survival and reclamation. I had faced the ultimate betrayal from those I loved most, and had turned it into an opportunity to assert my power, protect my future, and reclaim my dignity. Looking in the mirror before bed, I saw a 64-year-old woman with wiser eyes, a stronger heart, and a soul tempered by challenge. I whispered to myself, "I survived. I reclaimed my life. I am free." And with that affirmation, I turned off the light, the house silent around me, secure in the knowledge that no one could ever take my peace, my autonomy, or my home again. I was not just a survivor, I was a victor. This is the conclusion of Elellanena gripping journey, a story of betrayal, strategy, and ultimate empowerment. If her courage inspired you, share this story and remember, even in the darkest moments, vigilance, resilience, and self-love can reclaim your life.